Good morning, still officially. Good morning and Happy New Year to everyone, and welcome to the MPC. So currently I'm the vice chair of the organization. So a couple things we want to, adjustments are concerned. So Mayor Lundberg from Springfield has given her State of the City address today. So we will not have a quorum. And so which means that we will not approve the November 2nd minutes, and we will not be voting on the new chair and vice chair as well. But I think I'm going to look at Paul, but I think everything else is information items and a public hearing, but we do not have action items. Is that correct?
We don't have action items. The public hearing we can still conduct.
Yeah.
And number 7 is direction. We don't need a formal vote on number 7, so we can still do that also.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. So this time then, why don't we do introductions? And I'll start and then go to my right to Mayor Venice. So Sid Lykin, Lane County Board of Commissioners and current Vice Chair.
Lucy Venice, Mayor of Eugene.
Sarah Maderi, Public Works Director, Eugene.
Lynn Taylor, Minutes Recorder.
Kate Reed, Lane Transit District Board of Directors, Subdistrict 7.
Gary Wildish, Lane Transit District Board, District 6.
Aurora Jackson, Lane Transit District.
Brandy Brindle, Oregon Department of Transportation.
Bill Johnston, ODOT.
Paul Thompson, LCOG.
Jeff Kernan, City of Coburg.
Patty Giannoni, excuse me, City of Coburg.
Okay. So we'll go to the audience. I'm going to start there.
David.
Oh, David. Oh, I'm sorry. My staff. I'm just ignoring him.
It's all right. I'm invisible. David Reeser, Lane County, sitting in for Steve Moker-Heisky.
My apologies to David, who, by the way, he's the brains of the outfit, so I shouldn't do that. So anyway.
Rob Airfeld, City of Eugene. Tom Schwartz, LTD.
Kelly Hale, LTD.
Dan Collister, LCOG.
Ellen Furrier, LCOG. Ellie Clark, LCOG. Brian Freeze, LCOG. Where Barkman on the Pacific. Glenn Riley, River Road.
Howard Schuessler, LCOG.
Okay. So item 3, we're going to move to the next month. We did adjustments to the agenda. Any announcements real quick from MPC members? We might as well go ahead and so if any MPC members have announcements they want to share, we can go ahead and do that now.
I just might point out that Gary Gillespie termed out, and Kate is our permanent member to replace Gary Gillespie.
Oh, good. Welcome.
Well, and I must tell you, is LTD going to do something for Gary and wishing him the best, or I'm not sure, but I just personally want to say I appreciated Gary's service all these years on the LTD, not only LTD board but here at MPC, and his dry wit to me that's going to be really hard to replace. Kate, I just thought I'd let you know now, but you do your best. So, but I just want to say thank you to Gary. He did an outstanding job and really appreciated his.
Yeah, I'll relay that.
Please do.
We did a proclamation
Good.
At the last board meeting, and it was the fact is I delivered it today, hand delivered it to him. So I'll be sure to let him know.
Please do.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much. And Ellen Zelenka, Eugene City Council, has now arrived. Welcome.
Sure.
So item 5, comments from the audience. Do we have anybody signed? Yes, Paul.
There was nobody signed up, and I had 1 or 2 things to mention about agenda adjustments, if I could.
Please do.
So, although we can't formally act on number 6, in a moment I do want to mention something regarding the MPO consortium membership. Also, as you know, Commissioner, I'd like to add something probably under follow-up or near the end regarding the Mid-Willamette Valley transload facility and an update on that. And just in case we get ahead of ourselves, the LTD presentation here, which is 8B, we're going to have to maybe stall a little bit because my understanding is their presentation is on its way.
Okay.
So.
Well, if anybody knows any good jokes or something. Or...
Is that my time to shine?
Yeah.
There it is. Dry wit. Okay, that'll be perfect. So, okay, so we don't have Anybody signed up? And so item 6 will move to next month as well. And that's when we'll appoint the UMPOC members
Yeah,
for the election of the chair and vice chair, correct?
it is, and if I may, what I wanted to say about that is currently your 2 OMPOC members are Mayor Lundberg and Gary Gillespie, and obviously Gary's not going to attend OMPOC, which is meeting 3 weeks from tomorrow on the 26th in Salem. Mayor Lundberg can make that meeting, and even though we can't formally appoint a second member today, if there is a member here that would like to attend the OMPOC meeting 3 weeks from tomorrow in Salem, please speak up, and I'll make sure you get all the arrangements.
And what time is that meeting?
Generally, it starts around 9 a.m. with a bit of a breakfast and goes till 2 or 3 p.m., I think. 2:30 is what we're looking at.
Okay.
And that's in Salem?
Yes, in 3 weeks it'll be in Salem.
Does that work?
I could go.
Again, it's open to any of you as, a stand-in for this one time.
So that would be
No, if
great.
you'd be interested, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. Perfect. All right. So then we'll move on to item 7, and that's the OTC Continuous Improvement Advisory Committee. And Paul?
Yes. So we put this on the agenda as a standalone item. It's also, in a way, a follow-up from House Bill 2017. It's one of the many things that HB 2017 did, which was in the the improvement area of the bill, if you will, the ODOT accountability area. The bill established that the Oregon Transportation Commission would form a continuous improvement advisory committee, and while not a lot of work has been done on that and there's no firm information, what we do know, the ODOT proposal, the ODOT staff proposal to the commission suggests that there be 2 or 3 OTC members on that committee, there be a number of ODOT staff on that committee, and then there be outside members, public at large, if you will, members on that committee. And my understanding is that in looking for outside membership on that committee, they are looking less for the political or decision maker type of representation from the outside. They're looking more at technical expertise, if you will, people who might have expertise in process improvements because they're calling it a continuous improvement committee, people who might have expertise in how the department can improve its processes or improve its operations. So in that, the other thing, reason it's on here is because, as you know, we don't have a member on the OTC itself. We have tried the last couple of vacancies to achieve that and have not yet achieved that. This committee might be our next best level of representation to the OTC, so we would strongly suggest that we have one or more members or one or more people from this region perhaps applying or contacting the OTC to be considered for membership on this advisory committee. Again, it's not clear how that process will work, how the appointments will work. And Franny, I don't know if you know anything more. I've been waiting to get more information, and I'll certainly pass it along. There have been a number of names floated locally by people who would be interested so far, and I'll just throw out that Howard Schussler has mentioned that he might be interested in serving this region on that committee. Also, Roland has mentioned, Roland Hoskins. We've contacted, and he's open to being considered to serve on that committee. And just this morning, oh my gosh, what timing, Emma. Just this morning, in an email, Emma, I learned, would not only be here at this meeting, but I learned that there may be somebody from Springfield interested in serving on the Continuous Improvement Advisory Committee, but I don't know the name.
Correct. I don't know details, but I know that there's potential interest.
Okay, so there are at least 3 potential interests out there. I don't know if this committee wants to discuss that or suggest getting behind a person.
So a question I have is how many people will be appointed? Do they even know that number yet?
They don't know that number. It hasn't been determined. The ODOT staff proposal, I believe, said 3 to 4 outside members. But again, I don't know if there's been an update on that, Franny.
No, and I would have brought something had I thought about it. I didn't even see it on the agenda, but I tell you what, I can look into it and let you know.
And again, the last I saw was the ODOT staff proposal said 2 or 3 commission members. I believe they're only going to do 2 because 3 starts to get close to a quorum issue. 2 to 4 ODOT staff members and 3 to 4 is what I saw outside members.
Gary?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know if everybody knows Roland, but Roland Hoskins works with LTD, and he's had a lot of involvement in quality improvement, process improvement, that type of thing. And it's one of the assets that he brings to LTD is, I guess you're always looking at opportunities for improvement. And the other thing I think is that he's involved with a operation that is functioning, in transportation. And so I would, if he was interested,
I would hope that whoever, if we have a successful candidate from this region, whoever that person is would be available to give regular updates to this body and to carry messages from this body perhaps, or take input from this body. Again, it hasn't been determined how the committee will function, but the ODOT staff proposal suggests that they would meet quarterly.
Any other questions? And the timing is, do they have the timing yet? I'll ask that question too.
I believe they're going to discuss it further at this month's OTC meeting and hope to have appointments in February or March.
Okay.
So it's immediate.
Coming up quickly. All right. So we have, so I guess, Emma, the question I would ask you then is if we find out whom it is from Springfield that'd be interested, that an email could be sent out to the body to let us know.
I might have information before the end of the meeting, so
okay.
I'll let you know.
All right. Because I think you're right. I think it would be good if we identified an individual and we give that individual strong support and to serve on this committee. And you're right, we've been overlooked at OTC, so it'd be great to have somebody on a committee like this that's going to carry a lot of importance. So, very good.
All right. I will support the process however I can to get that name in the hat, and we need to have support from the MPC, although we don't have a quorum for a vote today. I guess I'm asking if the chair can look for head nods for the chair to indicate that the body supports, having a local person.
Absolutely.
And I see no objections, so I think that sounds great.
As long as it's not me.
Yeah. Very good. Okay. So we'll move on to item 8. And so we have some MPO issues, and item 8A is safety performance measures targets. And welcome, Ellen.
Thank you. So as we discussed at our last meeting, this is our first opportunity to adopt targets for the federal performance measures. And safety is the first category to adopt. And in your packet, I laid out some of the options that we have. So we'll be having a public hearing to discuss those 2 options. The first option that we can choose is to support the state targets. And the second option is to establish our own targets for our MPO area. There's a little bit of a difference between the 2. So if we adopt the state targets, we basically just agree to support their efforts, and we're not doing separate measurements, we're not doing separate reporting. If we do our own, then we're establishing our own targets, and we're responsible for creating the measurements for that and reporting those to the state. The staff team talked about this at the November TPC meeting and suggested that we adopt the state targets for the first year and revisit those on an annual basis. And they also recommended that we look at, as an MPO, kind of doing separate targets for vulnerable users. So looking at bicycle and pedestrian, elderly, and young users. That would just be for the MPO area. We would not be required to report those to the state or to the federal government, but that would just be something that we would track on our own.
Okay. Questions? Kate?
So I just had a question about table 1 in the packet for the TSAT performance. I was looking at the numbers, and the baseline numbers are all the same as the 2013-17 base period, except for the fatality rate, people per 100 million VMT. And I was just wondering what the change in those numbers are, since there is not a change also in the other VMT.
Yeah, so I think because, and in the packet, you'll see kind of some more information about how the state set their targets. They did an S curve. And so the way that that works is that there's a very minimal change in the beginning part of your implementation, and then it becomes more dramatic over time. So they thought that as they started to do countermeasures, it would take some time for those to be effective. And so there's very minimal change in the beginning, and then it becomes more dramatic over time. So that might be why that's reflected in just that, that one, that it might just have a minor change in the beginning. But yeah, if you look in the packet, there's a little bit more information about how they establish their targets, and you can actually see the curve of change over time.
I have to confess, I don't understand this chart. So at the top, it gives dates, fatality rate 2011 to 2015. So how does that relate to the dates on the column? I'm confused. Are we?
Yeah, so these are targets that we're trying to reach.
Right.
So this would actually, this is a rate of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. Right. So, and then the one next to it is the actual numbers of fatalities. So that's the reduction that they're expecting to see, through those periods of time.
And I think the other confusing part is that those dates along the top row, the 2011-15 or the 2010-14, are the baseline years
that they use.
And they didn't put it over by baseline because it changes per column. The baseline, depending on the availability of the data, changes per column. But those years at the top indicate the baseline year measurement time period.
So that would make sense why the
Yes.
VMT number is different. From
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Because it has a different baseline year period for the other per VMT measurement. The 2010-14 is different than the 11-15.
Great question.
Can I ask a clarification? On the bulleted list, the 1 through 5, is it actually number of roadway facilities, or is it supposed to say fatalities there? On the first page.
Yes, that is supposed to say fatalities.
I was looking for like the facility number, what that was. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, so this time we'll open the public hearing. And I don't think we have anybody signed up.
I did not earlier, but you may ask if there's any.
But I will go ahead, and if anybody's interested in this topic and wishes to testify, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. And seeing no one. So I will close the public hearing, and the question I have for you is, so this is the public hearing, is there still ample time for somebody who wants to send a written information to?
The public comment period's open until January 31st, I believe.
Okay.
And we won't be making a final decision until a February MPC meeting.
Okay, very good. Any other questions then? All right, thank you very much. And so we're still waiting? Oh, there it is. Okay. All right, so next item then is the West Eugene MX Ridership Report. And so, okay, so we'll be, Mayor and myself will move so we don't get blinded. And welcome, Tom. As soon as Ellen gets set up.
It's a big file. Did you get Eugene?
right. Well, it's still morning, so good morning. We're going to give you an overview of our ridership on West Eugene, but wanted to start with, this is a regional transportation policy body, so talk about some of the regional objectives that we had for this project, some of you might recall. But supporting the growth vision for the city of Eugene and for the region as a whole, supporting development of multimodal corridors, supporting safety and climate policies were some of the regional objectives that this project had. And then operationally, we use this opportunity to simplify our overall network design so it can be more connected, and we'll talk more about that. So it's planned connection points. And basically, we geared the redesign to supporting that cross-regional high-frequency service that MX has now from out on the west side of the region all the way up to the Riverbend Gateway area. And then, again, redesign the service to better serve MX. One of the things that we want to make sure we stress is that this project was more than just a transit project. It really transformed the community. And this is a transformation kind of before and after, showing one of the bridges that we put in, which increased the pedestrian and bike access to not just the transit service, but also the commercial part of the corridor. Another one here is on West 11th. And again, you can see a real big transformation in many parts of the corridor. And that is good, I think, for the economic development of the corridor, but also makes riding transit more attractive. Let me get the arrows pointing the right way here. So as I said, we took, just looking at the network, we redesigned the network to really feed the regular service into the high frequency corridor on West 11th. So those T's represent places where people could do regional transfers. And we'll talk more about the transfer activity and how that's going. So system-wide, overall ridership is up 1.2% year over year. That sounds like a small number, but it actually changes a trend over the past few years. You may have heard across the country, transit districts have seen declines in ridership. So the fact that we're seeing an increase is good news. We think it's stabilized. Perhaps a more rewarding finding from our standpoint is that Saturday and Sunday ridership are up relatively significantly, and that represents, we think, a broader use of transit than just the regular commute trips and all that you might see. And then the MX system itself is averaging over 12,000 boardings each weekday, which represents 35% of all system ridership during the week. You might have heard one of the stats that we used prior to West Eugene starting was that MX represents 25% of the ridership and 10% of the cost. We now see 35% of the system riding, and keep in mind we're talking about the first 3 months of operation. So it's we expect things to get better over time. But right now, 35% of the system ridership and 20% of the cost.
Was that 16 versus 17 on the
right? And then, so here's kind of a before and after look. And so we've been operating for approximately 1 quarter of calendar year 2017. And so comparing that to the 4th quarter of 2016, you can see, and this is all routes in the West Eugene MX, or the West Eugene market area, really. 513,000 in 2016, 620,000 at the end of the 4th quarter in 2017, which is a change of 21%. And I will tell you that's a positive number. And we broke that down so you can see fixed route service represents about 57% of that change, and MX represents about 43%. And so, as you might imagine, riders are transferring more frequently and shifting to other routes, from other routes onto the West Eugene MX. Again, we've seen corridor boarding activity on West 11th increase after September 17th, which is when we launched MX. And as I said, MX is carrying 43% of the boardings in the area. This chart shows a picture of our daily ridership, and as you might imagine, or you may understand, our Saturday and Sunday ridership is a lot less than our weekday ridership, and that's why you see those deep troughs. But the good news is we put a trend line in there across the time period we've been operating West Eugene MX, and the upward trend indicates that there's more people using the service over time. And again, 3 months in, that's a good trend to see. We'll come back and report, see how things are going in the future. One of the things that you may have heard is that we're going to be looking at, we're conducting a comprehensive operations analysis starting next month, and looking at ways of, you may have heard us talk about reconfiguring away from a hub and spoke network where we have a lot of direct, the design philosophy was let's create as many direct trips from as many areas as possible, and so you get the picture on the left side. That just given a fixed amount of resources means that you're really spreading thin your resources, and while people don't have to transfer, they're not getting very frequent service. You transfer over to the picture on the right-hand side. The lines are thicker, representing more frequent service. By creating a transfer right there in the center, you basically have the ability to go any of those places at a high level of frequency. So that's then this chart actually comes from a piece that Jarrett Walker did. So his firm is the one that's going to be doing our comprehensive operations analysis, and we look forward to the ideas that they bring. Talking more a little bit about boarding activity. So as we transition to more of a transfer-based gridded network is the terminology that's used, we're going to see transfers happening more. And so this was really a major test of how that concept would work. And you can see on the Commerce Station in 2017, 46,395 activities. That's both ons and offs. So people getting off of buses back onto another bus. And you can see that how that relates to some of our other key stations. What's interesting is to look at the change in that activity. And this says a lot about the patterns, and I'll explain this. So you see the big bar, Commerce is up 213% in terms of its ons and offs activities.
Where is that?
That's the end of the line for the West Eugene service.
The west end of West 11th.
Right.
Way down there.
Right. Basically, Walmart and Target is how people refer to it. Interestingly, at the top of the chart, you see Eugene Station boarding activity is down 5%. And people might say, well, what's going on? But what's happening is we now have an MX line going through downtown station that people aren't getting off that bus and getting onto another. And that's what was going on before. All those buses from West Eugene were coming downtown, transferring to other routes, and then moving on. So that's actually, again, a positive number in terms of our activity. And you can see where some of the other major transfer points are.
Does that mean that MX bus goes through Springfield to Eugene and all the way, same bus?
Right, same bus.
So you don't have to get on and off?
That's right. So just to recap, like I said at the top, we feel the MX West represents a transformation of the West 11th corridor, and ridership on the system stabilized, but the ridership in West Eugene is growing. One of the things I didn't talk about, but we want to come back at some point and talk to you about this. We're starting to see higher levels of midday ridership than we had before. Again, that means we're moving to a broader set of travel markets, not just the commute trip, but in the middle of the day. So, those kinds of things are interesting things we're going to continue to watch. The MX West addresses the demand for West Eugene service for that frequent weekend and midday service, and those trends are positive. And we're going to continue to look at addressing some of the transfer activity at key locations. We're finding that perhaps we need to look at how the amenities we're providing at transfer points, just because there's going to be more, we're going to need to provide for that. So that's the recap. And just to close, again, like I said, we have Jarrett Walker and his firm coming to town. We're also looking at one of the key things that we're finding is we really want to get out there and survey how people are riding the system, because it's a different way. And so we're looking at new ways, kind of tablet-based ways of surveying that'll allow us to be more nimble and get out there and test certain parts of the routes and figure out where people are going, where they're coming from. For example, one of the interesting questions we have is how many people are riding from one end to the other. So we're looking at a plan now to do some surveys at the Springfield station, finding people who've come from West Eugene and kind of where they're going and the time of day. And so that should reveal some interesting regional travel activity. And then we're looking at fare management and things that are going to really advance the way people can access our service. So that's what we had. Any questions?
Good. Alan.
Thanks for the presentation, Tom. Impressive kind of results. Expected that out of the MX system. Related to the construction and how that all proceeded, and now that it's almost all complete, what's your perception about how businesses fared during all of that? And I think you guys did a very good job of making access to all the businesses and things like that. So,
well, I think those kinds of things helped the businesses during the construction, and that's a process that has emerged, evolved over time as we built the 3 corridors, and as we look to potential future corridors. I mean, that'll be something that we want to continue to do. So all in all, we feel like things are working pretty good in that process.
Did you hear of anybody going out of business because of MX?
We did not hear that.
I mean, obviously it impacted businesses, but so does any road construction project.
Right.
I mean, the same argument can be made for, well, let's never repave a road then because it impacts your business.
Right.
Randy?
So there, early on when the West Eugene MX was first operational, there were some complaints from folks there was a disruption to their normal service and they had to get on the bus in a different location. Letters to the editor. Have those complaints gone down, or have you?
Yeah, I think as people have gotten to become familiar with how the system works, generally speaking, that's been good. Some of the early complaints that we got were people that were trying to had ridden the 40 series buses in. One woman worked at the university, for example, and she was really looking forward to MX, but she didn't have a way to get to Commerce to take MX, and so we made some adjustments that'll be put in place in early February that will allow her. We basically made the connection to Commerce start earlier, and that fits her needs better. And there was actually several people that fit that. So there's some adjustments we've made, but for the most part, people have adjusted, and as the data indicates, there's people are transferring, and that was a shift. People were used to that direct trip, but as we see it, we can provide a more effective and accessible service, more attractive service, taking this gridded transfer-based approach.
And the other thing I noticed is the commerce activity is being so high, and that's on and off. So it seems that maybe a lot of people on the west side are maybe driving and parking at Commerce, getting on the bus and getting into town for games, things like that, going to down. Is that what you're seeing? Or? Well,
we've seen some activity. I can't tell you what the activity at the park and ride is. We have set up an arrangement with Walmart to park there, and again, we're seeing activity there, right? I don't know the number. We can bring that back.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment also on the number of sidewalk improvements and other improvements that were incorporated into part of this project, and have you gotten some feedback on that, of people appreciating greater pedestrian access, bike access?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we haven't gotten a lot of that, but it's not clear that people generally understand that it was our project that did that either. So.
Interesting.
You know, it was very exciting to me to go out there and see the companies in that project. And one of the big challenges that we have and our partners, City of Eugene, City of Springfield, is being able to explain what it's going to be like when it's done. And I was absolutely amazed at what driving in from Veneta, going by Beltline and hitting the area, the start of the project. It looks clean, inviting, prosperous, and I never could have, I couldn't have visualized that. But this project turned out to be more than a transportation project. It turned out to be a community enhancement project with all the additional paths, bridges across the Amazon, the connectivity of the bicycle in the sidewalks and all that type of stuff. And there's some other things that people don't even sense, and you wouldn't sense unless you really understood it. And that is the fact that the traffic flow on 6th and 7th, it was predicted to be really ugly. Why isn't it ugly? In the turn lanes and whatnot, there are additional turn lanes. If you go to is it Chambers?
Chambers is one.
Chambers is there's a turn lane if you're going north that you slip out of traffic, you don't hold up traffic to make that turn. And there's a number of those throughout the project that is hard to explain to people. But yeah, it's I was surprised by some of the positive things that were hard to articulate before. But after the project, we can see some huge advantages in just the fact of people getting comfortable recognizing that a bus is in that lane. And it's kind of like Franklin Boulevard. The traffic on Franklin Boulevard flows very, very well into Springfield and whatnot. And it'll do the same. We'll get accustomed to these differences that we've experienced. So I'm kind of proud of what staff has done in City of Eugene and everybody else that was involved.
Alan?
Well, didn't you also plant several hundred trees that are all right now look like twigs with nothing on them?
Yes, that's
that. Well, people will see coming in the years to come. How many? Do you know how many?
Not off.
Net trees. It was several hundred.
There was a net increase in the number of trees. That we
like in the hundreds, though.
Yes.
Well, no, wasn't it a couple of hundred we took out, and I think we put back about 400.
Yeah, that's about.
It's fairly significant.
Yeah, almost double. But the question I had was follow on to what I asked before. Is so moving ahead has all those other potential routes. What were like the top 3 things that you guys are taking away from what you did in on the West Eugene one that you'll apply to the next set of these? That would be the things that would make those flow better and get more.
I think different people might have a different top 3, but I would say from a service planning standpoint, weren't sure how the transfer process would work. Again, the general theory in transit is transfers are bad. But we saw just in the Franklin corridor people willing to transfer from the number 11 on Main Street to Franklin. So that gave us some, but this was a massive scale of transfers, and the fact that it's worked, that's something we want to look at. It just allows us to, well, you remember that graphic, it just allows us to provide more effective and attractive service. So that's one. I think, again, these kinds of projects can be transformative in terms of the corridor's profile and actually set us up as a community for good, positive growth. And so looking at ways to do that, and both moving ahead and the work we're doing with Springfield are opportunities to work more closely together. I mean, I felt we had good relationship with the City of Eugene moving through this project, but I think moving ahead is taking that to another level. So I think that coordination and trying to think more strategically together about how we move that forward, that's a second piece. Third, gosh.
Can I say third?
Yeah, please.
I think the one that affects more kind of at the communication levels, I think the way we communicated the project, I think you made an interesting point earlier, the fact that whether you're doing a BRT or repaving a street, it's disruptive to the community. And I think in this project, one of the lessons learned is that we really were communicating the value of the project. And when the community was kind of telling us, you know, the impact to their business or all that, we kept talking about the value of the project.
Community value, bigger value.
Yes, and I think it took us a while to really kind of rethink that process. And I think because we were so focused on the community value, which I think people can now see it, we really didn't take a step back to look at those impacts and maybe do a better job on small, you know, businesses. We did go back after and do it very well, and we did, although we did not hear that any business went out of it, you know, kind of shut down. We do know that businesses were financially impacted during that process, so we don't want to minimize that did happen. And for a small business, that's a big deal during that time, you know. So I think that communication, we could have done a better job at that and really giving a more balanced view on that. And I mean, we still stand by the value to the community, but I think our communication, how we do that, we could do that a lot better in future corridors.
Yeah, and that would garner more support and less opposition potentially. The other thing you did was you had that rolling construction. You didn't do the whole thing. You did this one, then you went to this one, then you went to this one.
And that was
so everybody wasn't impacted.
That was a direct response to the community impact. And I think had we done that earlier, I think we would have gotten businesses that were kind of on the fence. But I think because we were really just focused on the great work that we were doing, that we didn't do the communication. So it's not about was the project not valuable, it's how we did it. And then so we had to do that towards the end of the project, or while the project was already in motion.
So next time this will be all front.
Oh yeah, we won't do that again. Yes, absolutely.
Gary, you have anything to add? You lived through all of that.
Yeah, I was impressed with the ability to have as little impact as it did on businesses, because, as you know, I've built a lot of streets in this town, and but I looked at the schedule that they had and the time that they were impacting businesses was about half of what would have been had you done a reconstruct on a street. You know, many of the streets, you know, I reconstructed 18th from Garfield west, and that was a mess for a long time. And they were able to do this in about half the time, the impact on those. So it was, no, I was impressed with how they finally got it worked out to where they minimized as best they could.
Yeah, it does obviously have an impact.
They became sensitive to the impact.
And using that to the next move on.
Absolutely.
Pieces would be real valuable. Good, thanks.
Kate?
Yeah, I just wanted to say also in follow-up around business interaction now, one of the things that the team has done is reached out to the businesses along the corridor and involved them with group passes for a period of time, and that people have been very responsive to that. So a lot of the employers along the corridor are now participating in the final outcome of the project, which I think is a really cool interaction. I know there's been some of the employers that were kind of the largest naysayers at the beginning who have come full circle, and that follow-up communications piece that staff did was very, very effective for the business owners.
Yeah, if you could get some, when this first started, I was opposed to it. Now I think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Testimonials would be great.
Yeah. Here's one.
Any other questions? So the only thing I have, and I think this is really for future, but it's hard to believe. So in a couple of weeks, the folks from IAAF will be here, and taking a look and touring the area. And these, of course, IAAF is the organization that oversees the World Track and Field Games. So they're going to be here, Eugene, in a couple weeks. And so we've got 3.5 years to prepare for 220 something countries, whatever that number is, that'll be here. More than just, let's not forget, the games are 10 days, but people are going to be here for a month or more. And this is a great opportunity to showcase to the world what we have going for us. So, and I think that, LTD will play a significant role because you think about it, all the countries coming from, especially across the Atlantic and South America and other places, transit is such a significant portion and significant transportation piece for people to get around. And so I think it's a grand opportunity. Not only that, but then we also, the other one I look at is, you know, how you will look at the Franklin corridor. And because I hope folks understand the Night Science Campus is really potentially a major game changer for our communities. And I think the Franklin corridor from Eugene to Springfield will play a gigantic role in that. But not just Eugene, Springfield, it's Lane County. And I was still amazed when our Association of Oregon Counties conference was here. We had Chris Edwards did a presentation, and we had 100 people from counties all over the state come to hear the presentation of the Night Science Campus. And not only did they see what was happening here, they could actually taste the vision that could happen in their communities based on the potential startups that could be happening from just that. And so it was really kind of incredible to see, and knowing that it's going to be happening here. I think, you know, not just LTD, but I think just this body, I think our partnerships we have with all of our government organizations and beyond, we've got a really grand opportunity here for the next 3 years to, we've got a lot coming on our plate, we'll put it that way. It's almost kind of step back going, whoa, how do we do this? But we'll get it done. Anyway, Tom, I want to say thank you very much, and this was a really good presentation. Kind of gives us a really reality update on what's happening, and I'm very appreciative. So,
sure. Let us know when we come back.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can someone hit the lamp? Yeah, thank you.
That is blinding.
Okay, so Paul, it says MPO Obligation Reports. I don't know what. Oh, okay, got it. Thank you. Yep, thank you. All I had to do is flip over the page, and there's your name. So.
Thank you. My name is Dan Collister. I'm Transportation Planner at LCOG. This item is the annual listing of the obligated projects. There's a requirement for MPOs to publish an annual listing of projects for which federal funds have been obligated during the previous federal fiscal year. The two reports that were included in your packet, they satisfy the requirement for the Central Lane MPO for FY 2016 and 2017. There are two reports this time. We received the obligation information, the numbers from ODOT at the end of each federal fiscal year. There were some delays with the FY 16 numbers because of some software problems, and we were provided those numbers at the end of FY 17 along with the 17 numbers. So that's why we have two reports today. For those of you who don't know, obligated funds are federal funds that are set aside into what might be thought of as a separate account, specific for the work on a specific project or work phase. And then subsequent bills for that work are paid from this account. And the obligation of a work phase or a project indicates that the project is authorized to begin. For federal highway, projects, obligation occurs when a project agreement is executed. For FTA projects, the obligation occurs when a project proposal is approved by FTA. So turning to the project, there are the reports themselves. The first half of both reports is pretty similar. It's just a summary of the funding that's programmed in the MTIP. And that would be the 15-18 MTIP, which is the MTIP for these federal fiscal years. The federal funds are, of course, play a significant role in the work that we do in the MPO. In the MTIP, the 15-18 MTIP, the federal funds account for approximately 73% of the funds that were programmed, roughly $208 million. Excuse me. The second half of the report, starting on page 10, gets to the actual obligation details for each of those federal fiscal years. I will draw your attention specifically to page 13 of both reports, which includes the meat and potatoes of this report, the actual list of the projects and the obligations. The previous 2 pages kind of summarize those obligation numbers by federal funds source, by work type, and by applicant agency. I am happy to answer whatever questions you might have about these reports or how obligation works. I may not be able to answer satisfactorily questions about specific projects if you have them, but I'll give it my best shot.
Any questions?
I just had a correction. Under the partner cooperative process piece in both, it lists William Lane Parks and Recreation District. It's just Park and Recreation District moving forward.
Thank you. That is noted.
And I recognize that on page 13, Springfield's projects, I didn't see anything from the Maine McVeigh project. I know they had PE obligated.
I'm sorry, which report?
On page 13 of the federal obligations report, federal funds obligation.
16 or 17?
Page 13.
I'm sorry, which year? Which
what
report
year?
16?
The 16.
17 up there.
17, yeah.
Regarding Willamette Lane, is that what you said?
No, Springfield, it didn't have the Maine McVeigh project on there, and there was a federally funded project that would have had obligation of PE. They're in construction now, but
I can look into that. It's possible that the actual agreement was not between October 1st and September 30th. I guess that's the only reason it wouldn't show up in this report.
Kelly.
I would just add to that that there was one federal grant that was applied to that project, and it was expended before this fiscal year. And the rest of the funding for that project has been local funds, so STU.
True. Yeah, that's true. Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
I'm guessing that that's
So it was
why
from
doesn't
16.
show
Okay.
because it's not a federal funded project in this year.
In this year. Okay, great.
That
Thank
would
you.
make sense.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
Oh, I just want to add that if there is any questions, I asked about the, in table 1 on both of the reports, there's a list for William Lane in there for $238,175, and that's the Thurston Hills Natural Area process that's been underway for a few years now. And then the other was the, mill race path. So those were the 2 things. They're not listed under the obligated projects because they'd already happened and they weren't necessarily federal funds.
Federal funds, right.
Just in case anyone had a question.
Any more in the presentation?
No?
Okay. Good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, so the next, so item D is follow-up next steps. And first of all, ODOT update. Franny or Bill, anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to let everybody know that ODOT is undergoing their strategic business plan that was called for partially when House Bill 2017, the accountability measures, But what we wanted to do was provide, improve ODOT's organizational fitness and health, and provide support delivery of our transportation priorities and services. So we are at the OTC has adopted the plan priorities and strategies and outcomes at the end of the year, and in January to June we'll be working on measurements and implementing the plan. But there's 4 emerging priorities that will be part of the strategic plan. One is governance and accountability, and that's defined as how the agency should define direction, set priorities, and align accountability across the agency. Workforce, how we're going to build a sustainable workforce to meet today and tomorrow's needs, and enhancing effectiveness of leaders at all levels. Strategic investment, which is best to expand and link the various cycles and timing of our financial investment decisions. So as you know, we have our long-term highway plans that are 20, 25 years out, and then we have the STIP, which is a 4-year financial plan, and then we have our budget, which is a biennium state budget. So we're trying to align all those so that it makes more sense for both internal and our customers, and have a strategic investment plan. And then also looking at technology and data, how to enhance our current and future use of technology, including intelligent transportation, and make information more reliable, accessible, and useful. So as this plan is developed and we're into the implementation stage, I will have somebody come and do a presentation to both the ACT and the MPO so that you know where our focus is going to be on and get your input. Also, I just got this report is a 2017 bridge condition report and tunnel data. It talks about the bridges within the state and where we're at with our bridge maintenance and seismic and replacement strategy. I'll be reviewing this, and we could talk about this more at the ACT. As we talk about the 21-24 STIP, there's a lot of opportunities in the future, not a lot of money, but some opportunities for leveraging our fix-it projects. And those fix-it projects will be focused on preservation and bridge. But there'll be opportunities to look at active transportation leverage, safety leverage ideas that the ACT will bring ideas, and we'll get some people will be applying for and during the spring of this year. So these condition reports will become more important, and how we assign and decide on what projects are eligible and needing to be fixed and programmed for preservation will be important. So we'll be talking about that a lot in the future as well. And last but not least, we are going to be paving Beltline this summer from stem to stern, from Roosevelt to the freeway. So interestingly enough, we're going to get nice new pavement, but we did a presentation to some contractors and around statewide significant projects, and the contracting community wants us to look at and consider closing the Beltline at night for certain, like a small window of time or on a slow weekend, if there is ever such a thing, so they could get in and get out. So we're like going, oh my God, I'm a nervous wreck. So I just wanted to put that out there. I doubt that will do that, but I don't know. I mean,
what does night mean?
That means like really dark, like after midnight, before 6, when it's not used very, but we'd have to set it. It's going to be a mobility nightmare. Closing the Beltline, that's like, but in Portland they closed the Interstate Bridge once for a maintenance project back in 2007, was it? It was well advertised and everybody had alternative routes. But I will tell you, there is an advantage of, right, Gary? There's an advantage of getting contractors in. They could do a seamless pave, less matching, less seamless. And it's a short amount of time that they could get in there and have a nice, smooth finish. So we'll be looking at it. And I'll be reporting on that, and oh my gosh.
Well, Gary almost had a grouchy look on his
Yeah,
face.
Gary.
I'll
have to consult
I have a
with Gary.
problem. I use Beltline all the time. And I know how much traffic is on Beltline. And when you explain to me the number of cars that cross the McKenzie River on I-5, and I compare that to Beltline at the Willamette River Bridge, guess which one's the highest? Significantly higher.
Mackenzie versus Willamette River Bridge?
The Willamette River Bridge on the Beltline is higher than I-5.
Wow.
So that's why when you said shut it down, I live out there, I use that, that's my lifeline. But her point in terms of getting them in and getting them out has some real merit, because it's tough to get good joints if you do it in little pieces.
Well, it's going to be inconvenience regardless. How would they do it if they didn't shut it down? Like do one lane at a time?
Yep, one lane at a time typically, and sections, section by section, one lane at a time.
One lane at a time at 5 o'clock?
Yeah.
No, they would still do it at night.
I know, but
Yeah.
it would still be one lane.
Yeah, it would
5
still,
o'clock
it would
for
be
a
flat.
longer period of time than having it shut down for a shorter period of time.
So there's also.
That's a pretty interesting
There's
trade-off.
also the safety aspect. So you've got workers out there, right, in the lanes, and they're flagging and they're coning off and they're exposed. So there's that vulnerability for a longer period of time. So their exposure is a greater period of time for a longer. So anyway, there's that too. And
Safety.
yeah.
Yeah, well, with one lane, that line would go all the way back to I-5 Willamette Bridge.
That's right.
Well, and you know, the detours, we have to think about how but we do know that regardless of whether they would close the Beltline, they would have to be closing the on and off ramps for the pave. So there's that too, right? So that of the ramps being, anyway, it sounds like we need more discussion about this.
And if they closed it, how long would that go on?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Would it be, like 2 nights, 3 nights? I don't know. But we have to talk to the contractor.
Oh, well, that's doable. I was thinking longer.
Right. It wouldn't be during the World Cup, that's for sure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, World Games.
Get it done before then.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, you heard it here first.
All right.
We're talking about it, and I'd like to be transparent.
This
So there you
summer.
go. This summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so Springfield Main Street safety update.
I have a brief update. We're getting very close. ODOT staff, Springfield staff, and the consultant will be meeting on Monday to talk about the final draft of the scope of work, and then we'll be submitting it to the ODOT contract specialists soon.
Very good. Paul, anything to add?
Not on that. I was actually going to shoehorn something in under the ODOT update. You may have noticed we didn't put a legislative update item on here. There's not a lot to report yet. Legislative days are coming up. The session will start in a little over a month. Oregon Transportation Forum is meeting next week, so we might start get some information there about what is pending in the February session. But what I wanted to shoehorn in here is that there is still other implementation work going on under HB 2017 beyond that continuous advisory committee. And I don't know if Franny has anything to report on some of that. I was going to even maybe put AJ on the spot because I know she's serving on the transit funding committee and they've met a couple of times. So if there's anything that either of you or others might want to share, I haven't been attending all of those implementation committees.
I'd be more than happy to share where we're at. So some of the big kind of topics we're handling is we're required, how do we receive the money? How do we disperse the money? The way the bill is written, if there's no mass transit provider or large transit provider, the county receives it. If in Lane County, in our region, Lane Transit District would be the recipient of the funds, and then in addition to ourselves being a transit provider, other transit providers could apply for the money directly. So that means we're allocated a formula of dollars. And then based on that formula of dollars, we actually have to collect, say Florence or Oak Ridge and Cottage Grove all have transit systems. So we would have projects, they would submit them to us. We would then bring them before an advisory body, and that is all the rulemaking that we're having discussion about. What is that criteria for that rule? That would then get, that recommendation would then move to our governing body, and then we would submit those projects to the state for funding specifically to that. It seems pretty straightforward, but it's very complex, especially in communities in which the county is receiving the money, and there's such as Corvallis, and then they have a transit system. So they're basically asking their county for the money, and without direct control of that money. So all of those kind of messiness, we're figuring out how do the rules really present a clear plan. In addition to that, the state is requiring every recipient of funds to adopt some type of plan, local plan, that kind of encompasses. So we do have local plans here that we can point to as to what our community has adopted. So we're in a good place. But in some communities, it's not as clear. So the rules are really, we're just hashing out all of those pieces to make sure that everybody throughout the state has a clear direction about how do we ask for the money, how do we create performance standards, that's another criteria, and how often do we submit information to the state. Originally, they were asking us to submit like monthly reports. And what we were saying is just the burden of submitting monthly reports, you're using some of that money administratively. Would the state even be reading those monthly reports? Is that enough time? So we're really looking more at quarterly or semi-annually or something like that. So we're still really in the weeds of all of the pieces, and at our next meeting, I believe we will have a lot more of that, because you're able to go on their websites, very user-friendly, and you're able to submit your comments. They then print all that out, they give it to the committee, and we're able to read that and then have a discussion about that. So, but we have a tight timeline for getting this done. So we only have a few meetings, and what we're doing, our next meeting is next week, and they were originally only 2-hour meetings. They're sometimes as long as 4 hours.
Oh my gosh.
To try to get through all that, and there's a lot of homework to be done on them, because you really have, for you to really represent, you have to be able to read everybody's comments and know that the rules that we are making don't just affect our community, although that's who we're trying to make sure that it gets a voice in it, but it's got to work for the entire state. So it's a messy process, but we're glad to be at the table and having a voice. Yes.
Very good.
The All Roads Transportation Fund, Safe Routes to School, that's what I'm trying to say, group is meeting, and we had a briefing yesterday from Amanda Peets, who's been on that. Is anybody in here on that? Yeah, okay. You might want to add to this, but I know the discussion has been focused on the percentage of match, because the local communities have a 40% match to those funds, and there's been discussion about small communities and with smaller populations having less, or Title I school area, more Title I schools having like a 20% match instead of a 40% match. I don't know what the timeline is for the rulemaking, but they're still in the process of working out those rules. And then the other thing that's been discussed is the state share, that the state ODOT gets a portion of those funds and how those funds would be used. Ideas are, of course, to help with the match for small communities, but then there's other ideas about how to prioritize projects on the state system, and where would they provide the most benefit to the schools. Nothing to that? Okay, thanks.
Okay, so Paul, go ahead.
So if nobody else has an HB 2017 contribution. I'm going to add one other different thing to the ODOT update, which is good news that if you recall, I think we've told you, and it's mainly been a discussion at the ACT, that about a year ago, LCOG applied for funding to study the feasibility of transit service between Eugene and Florence. That grant application wasn't successful, but less than 2 months ago, a group of staff got back together, myself, LTD, the two tribes, Florence, ODOT staff, and we have found the funding. ODOT has committed to providing the majority of the funding, roughly $60,000. The two tribes are contributing about $5,000 each, which will go towards the match, since that'll be non-federal dollars. And then LCOG and LTD will probably cover the rest of the match through in-kind staff work, technical assistance on it. LCOG will be the lead on the study, but we'll probably be using a consultant. We're finalizing the scope of work and the contract now and hope to kick it off as early as next month. So we will be working on at least determining the feasibility of transit service to Florence and, if any is feasible, what it looks like.
So this was a common topic at the ACT, and so Mr. Rivernider will be very, very happy to hear. And but also with Florence gaining, I should say, some kind of celebrity type of press here of late, perfect timing. So that's great. Good. Yeah, Bill?
Quick item to add to the ODOT update and the Lane County update. I'd like to mention that Lane County commissioners adopted the Transportation System Plan on December 12th. This is the end of a 4-year effort. It's a significant accomplishment not only for Lane County but also ODOT and for the whole metro area. This completes the full update of all the plans here in the metro area. Springfield was updated a few years ago, you may remember. Eugene just adopted its plan. Lane County has now adopted its plan, and Coburg, not to forget Coburg, they updated their plan. So that's a big accomplishment for the metro area to have fresh transportation system plans. The Oregon Transportation Commission does not have to formally adopt these plans except for the so-called alternate mobility targets on state highways. So we'll be bundling up all the alternate mobility targets from all these plans and bringing those forward to the OTC for their incorporation into the Oregon Highway Plan.
Very good.
So a big accomplishment for the whole metro area.
Agree. Okay, item 3 is a rail update. I don't know if we have a rail update from anybody. All right, seeing none. So OMPOC.
We already really covered most of what I was going to say earlier, which is that 3 weeks from tomorrow, OMPOC will hold its next meeting. Kate actually has a copy of the agenda right now, but it'll be posted on the OMPOC website shortly, and a lot of it is looking forward to the legislative session, also looking at a statewide development of a MTIP platform. You just heard about the MTIP. That's something that we want to discuss and continue a project to get all 9 entities, ODOT and the 8 MPOs, on a uniform platform, because right now we're on 9 different platforms. But nothing more to say except we're meeting in 3 weeks, and we'll give you an update after the meeting.
Very good. Lane Act. Lane Act.
We have a meeting coming up next week, January 10th. It's the first meeting since November. We took December off. On the agenda will be an update from the City of Eugene. We rotate that opportunity to talk about the local community. There's a guest speaker from the ODOT Rail and Public Transit Division who will be coming down to talk about the statewide Transportation Improvement Fund. This is the new transit fund that was created by House Bill 2017. It's funded by payroll tax. So Karen Criswell will be talking about that program. Funds from that program will be available beginning January 2019. There'll be an election of new chair and vice chair. Commissioner Likens pleased about that. He's served commendably the last couple of years. We have a new chair, Mayor Joe Henry from Florence. We'll be providing an update on the 2021-24 STIP. The OTC did make some decisions concerning funding allocation in December. We can provide this group an update at the next meeting if you like, but we'll be talking with the Lane Act about it next week. There'll be some amendments to the Lane Act bylaws, some stakeholder committee member selections, and other miscellaneous business.
Very good. Item 6, MTIP administrative amendments. I think that's attached.
Yeah, again, these are the administrative amendments that your advisory committee, transportation planning committee, or TPC approves, and we include these for your information in the packet. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. I will note that the first amendment on there is somewhat significant in that it adds a new project and includes the $3 million out of HP 2017 to start studying the Florence Eugene highway section, essentially between West Eugene and Veneta. The reason that we had to approve this within the MPO is because part of the study corridor is within the MPO boundary. In other words, it's within our jurisdiction. But this is good news that they're looking at or getting the NEPA work and the preliminary design work underway on that.
Where is the boundary?
Which, the study or the MPO?
No, for MPO, that's...
Our MPO boundary on that side is roughly Green Hill. And this is looking at the end of the 4-lane segment of West 11th. So it's that segment between where West 11th 4-lane ends and Green Hill that's within the MPO. But the study goes from there all the way to Veneta.
Okay, so I've asked Paul to also address a quick update on the Mid-Willamette Valley reload, transload, it's all different names. So anyway, and so Paul, if you want to go ahead and just provide an update on that, that'd be great.
Okay, I will do a quick update, and I literally just hit send on an email to all of you and staff that sends out what ODOT sent out yesterday, announcing the 6 pre-proposals that were received. So this again stems from HB 2017. If you recall, that bill provided $25 million each for the development of 2 transload or intermodal transfer facilities, one of them in eastern Oregon and one of them in the Mid-Willamette Valley. The process in the legislation called for pre-proposals to be submitted, and then ODOT would select a number of those pre-proposals and fund those entities that submitted the pre-proposals to develop full proposals. And once the full proposals were submitted, they'll then select one entity or one proposal in each of those 2 locations and presumably proceed with developing the transload facility. So as is noted in what I just sent you, there were 6 pre-proposals received, 1 for the eastern facility, and that one is on a fast track. They're expecting that may even be constructed within the next 3 years, so it's moving forward. And then there were 5 pre-proposals submitted for the Mid-Willamette Valley facility. And again, I sent you the outline of the information and as well as a link to all 6 of the proposals. I didn't want to print these out for you because they're 80 to 100 pages each. And most of that is letters of support. So, but I will tell you quickly what those are. The 5 Mid-Willamette Valley pre-proposals, one of them is by the Oregon Shipping Group on behalf of what's called the Oregon Port of Willamette for a facility in the Brooks area, just north of Salem. Second one is a submission by the Green Hill Multimodal Facility Group, which is basically submitted by the Green Hill Reload Corporation. This is the West Eugene reload facility that exists, and they're proposing to turn it into a more extensive, fuller multimodal transfer facility. The third one is again submitted by the Oregon Shipping Group on behalf of Lifts Oregon. That's the name they've adopted for this pre-proposal to develop the intermodal facility in Lebanon. The fourth one is a proposal by Northwest Container Services, and it doesn't specify a location. It says that they would develop a proposal that might include a facility located in Lebanon, Brookings, Millersburg, Springfield, or Eugene.
Oh.
So, still to be determined what that one could turn into. And then the fifth one is the one that I think most of us already knew about, which is the Lynn Economic Development Group has submitted a pre-proposal for developing the facility at the Millersburg location where the paper plant used to be. That proposal, as well as the Green Hill proposal, did receive letters of support, if you will, from the Lane County Board of Commissioners, those two. Interestingly, the Lynn County proposal for the Millersburg site also has support from Senator Beyer and other members of the Joint Transportation Committee that wrote HB 2017, and many of their supporting statements call out their legislative intent that the facility be located at that site.
Oh my gosh.
So it may have a leg up.
Yeah, maybe.
May not, I don't know. What I will close with saying is that the process at this point is that again, the 5 pre-proposals for the Willamette Valley one are going to be looked at by ODOT, and they expect to actually have a decision by later this month on which ones to recommend receive funding to develop full proposals. So we should know by your next meeting on February 1st which ones are moving forward.
So 2 move forward, one of them is going to be the East Side one, and one of them is going to be one of the 5?
No, actually what's going to happen is that clearly the pre-proposal for the East Oregon one will move forward into a full proposal because that's the only submission, and that was pretty much recognized as that was going to be the case. Out of the 5 for the Mid-Willamette Valley one, they could fund 1 or more pre-proposals to be fully developed as proposals.
Oh,
so,
and then decide.
Yes.
So what happened to Goshen?
The question was what happened to Goshen, Commissioner? So there was really no outside group that was that had pulled together to submit anything from at Goshen, and so I think because it's a concept more than reality, that it just wasn't the cards weren't there at this point in time. And looking at the I think Paul said it perfectly when you saw the statements by the members of that Joint Transportation Committee. This was the legislative intent. Really? Okay. So, but at the same time, I think that the proposals was I think that's right. You're having professional staff go through this, and they're going to try to keep the politics out of it as much as possible, even though that'll be very challenging. I will tell you that. We looked at it 2 ways. The Board of Commissioners, first of all, we wanted to be supportive of somebody from Lane County, even though I would say that the Green Hill facility is it's not very big. It's a nice facility because it's right next to the Coos Bay Rail Link, so it's a nice facility. There's no doubt about it. But as far as the regional significance piece, it'll have a challenging time playing into that. The Lynn County one is pretty interesting, and I was able to meet with Representative Olson and Commissioner Nyquist, and also met with the consultant working on the project. And I think at the end of the day, if that one is chosen, it looks like they are prepared to really put forth a collaboration with Lane County. So you would have the connectivity from Lynn County all the way down to the UP yard, to the Green Hill facility, to the Coos Bay Rail Link, to the Port of Coos Bay. And there was really, in fact, that whole thing really resonated. And not only resonated with the consultant, but meeting with some of the ag shippers in particular, they really liked that concept a lot. There's really there seems to be, it kind of died down a little bit, but there seems to be a big focus on the Port of Coos Bay. And I think because Terminal 6 was down for so long, it's now back up again. But a very interesting presentation I heard from Alan Ford, who, of course, looks at business globally. And he was talking about these new ships. And the challenge that the Columbia River has is that the ships are just too deep. They're too big. And they literally could not make the Columbia River because that's got a hard bottom and it just goes so deep. But the Port of Coos Bay is so soft of a bottom. It's 37 feet without dredging. And so you dredge, it's only 7 miles off the Pacific Ocean, that literally those ships could come right into the Port of Coos Bay dock, load and unload, but yet they would be much more challenged going out the Columbia River to Terminal 6. But this facility, because of the location, I looked at an aerial view. It's really interesting. You have Union Pacific here and Burlington Northern right here. So you have the two Class 1s like right there, and it splits. And it's 190 acres, I think, which means it's not only reload facility, but they have the opportunity to build like frozen storage, major warehouse facility, all encompassing right there. So trucks can load, unload, put it on train, bypass I-5 bridge, and either hit the port, Tacoma, come back down here, hit the Coos Bay. It's really interesting to see. So we'll see, but Lane County is really engaged in this, and we're pretty excited just to see with that, but also have to be excited that one of our locals said, yeah, we're going to do this. And they have a lot of support, by the way. They've got a lot of letters of support from our legislative delegation, and Senator Roebland carries a lot of weight too. And so it's going to be very intriguing once these decisions are made. But ultimately, I think there's going to be a lot of benefits for Lane County. And so we'll keep you up to speed. So I'm glad, Paul, I'm glad you brought this. And so you've sent the link out so you can see the proposals and you know what's going on. And so it's pretty exciting.
And I can just add that page 5 of the Linn County proposal for the Millersburg site has a description of the connectivity and a map, and that includes connectivity, as they put it, to the Oregon International Port of Coos Bay, and to provide for marine connections and the marine highway system and short sea shipping to the Port of Portland, Port of Tacoma, Port of Oakland, Port of Los Angeles, and Port of Long Beach. So they're clearly including the connection down through our area to Coos Bay as part of this facility's benefits.
So the consultant reached out to Alex Kyler and asked for that information and what that means for Lane County going to the port. So we were able to, and that's when we knew, okay, this could be serious. And with Lane County being involved, we could potentially put this as a United Front project. And where Lane County does not have the lobbying expertise in DC that Lane County does. And so this is where there's some interest with this collaboration. So it's pretty exciting, and who knows, we'll see where it goes, but so far so good.
Good.
That's next week, isn't it?
All right, I think that's it. And then we'll work on our schedule for next month. And
I just want to call out one more time, it's on the agenda there, that we're still alternating between Springfield and Eugene, but we have a new Springfield location. The library meeting room's not available on our meeting date anymore, so please note that next month we'll be at the Springfield Justice Center.
Which is a great meeting room.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep. All right, so with that then, wow, look at that.
Thank you, well done.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Good.